Hello, this is Russell Almond with the Choristers Guild, and welcome to the Open Fifth podcast, where we talk about musical topics for the church, the school, the community, and everything from C to G. Today, we're going to be giving you a little bit of an insight into the music publishing world. You might be asking, why is that important, or what? I don't even know what that is, but the music publishing world is a very interesting topic as we see composers making their content and then taking that and going through a publisher in order to get it into the hands of the musician. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Of course, with Choristers Guild, we are a music publishing company, and so this is right near and dear to our hearts. We're going to start out by just kind of looking at how the composer might come up with, a song or something to be sung. How does that even work? But then how do they submit it to a music publisher, and how do we publish it? What does that process actually look like? Because many times you just go on a website and you say, oh, I like this piece, it sounds good, or that's a well-known composer, I trust everything that they write, and then you sing it. But how does that actually get to that spot where it's on the website ready for you to purchase? So that's what we're going to look at today. So we're going to start out by thinking a composer. Okay, where do they start? And maybe you're a composer and you're thinking, I don't know where I start. Well, it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. But in general, you have to think if you're going to make an original work or if you are going to do an arrangement. So if you start with an original work, that's the easiest, but also the hardest. Easiest because you just start planning and eventually you come up with something and then you just keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. So that makes it hard because you got nowhere to start, but you also get to just make it your own. On the other side, if you're doing an arrangement, you have to think about copyrights, you have to think about who originally owned the music, and all of that types of stuff. And that's something actually that music publishers can help you with. But if you're going to obtain copyrights, then you have to start thinking, okay, is this public domain or not? I don't know if you've heard that term before, but public domain would be something where the composer has passed, and so it is, there's a year set for each one where it becomes public domain and you don't have to pay royalties to the original composer of that anymore. Interesting fact, Great is Thy Faithfulness just became public domain in the last year. And so if you start looking around, you might notice that there's a lot more arrangements of Great is Thy Faithfulness. And part of that is because now they don't have to pay any extra royalties, and you can go on ahead and just enjoy arranging it to your heart's desire. But once you've got the actual piece, then you think, okay, I have a piece, it's wonderful, and I want to share it with everybody. What do I do? Well, some people will self-publish and just publish through their own website or something like that. But a lot of times people will use music publishers in order to get marketing, in order to get more notoriety. So they will use a submission process. For us, we just have our editors for each line. So we have a sing line, for schools, and then a handbell line and a sacred choral line. So let's just take the sacred choral route. If let's say you've arranged Great is Thy Faithfulness, and you're thinking, okay, I want to submit this. Who do I submit it to? What does that process look like? All of the above. What do I do? So you will start out you can just submit it to any publisher and just to get some feedback. But also, it's really important to think about what each publisher's goal is. Every publisher has a different style, and every publisher has a different goal within their catalog that they are going to release. For us, thinking Sacred Choral, we always release about 10 children's pieces per season and about 10 adult pieces per season. So if if we're looking for more adult arrangements for that season and you submit a children's, then we might not pick it for that season. We might say, oh, we might put that in a future season, or we might just have to say, I don't think that's going to work for us this year. But you also have to check on styles. One person at a conference that I was recently asked, she was an aspiring composer, and she was just like, what's your style? Like, if I was going to submit to you, what are y'all looking for? And that was a super good question, because every publisher really does have a style. And if you can figure that out just by looking at their catalog, take their most recent releases and look at what they're doing. For us, we're really known well for really high quality children's music. So it's going to be, maybe it could seem a little bit more difficult for a child, but we try to make them all accessible. But it's going to really showcase the child's voice and provide a really good quality. So we're going to look for pieces that really highlight that. So that's just a little bit about the submission process. But what happens when you send it in and we accept it and we say, okay, we're going to publish that? What happens next? Well, you're probably going to have to sign a contract, that's going to line up your royalties, and that's going to line up when we release it and all those type of things. But once that's done, then we'll schedule a release time for that, and then you get to be all excited as you promote to everybody that your piece is going to be published. Then after that, it actually goes through an editing process. Now, a lot of people, when they hear like editing, they're thinking, well, I already really like what I have, and that's true. We really want to highlight the composer's strengths, but we all know that we have strengths and weaknesses. And that's one thing that our editors do a fantastic job of, and editors at every publishing company are trying to do this, that they really are looking at, how do I highlight the amazing, creativity of this composer that's within this piece while making it marketable and, fitting it into the catalog that we have. For example, if you write a little bit too high, maybe for a children's voice, or maybe you have a piece that's a little bit more simple, and we might think, okay, that would go well for smaller choirs, then you probably don't want huge chords and really wide ranges, because with smaller choirs, you have less people that might be able to hit those notes and it'd be more exposed. So we might talk about that a little bit. Doesn't mean that the editor is just going to change it without letting you know, because our intent is always to maintain the composer's intent of the piece. We do not want to edit it to death where you think, oh, as soon as, by the time we got done editing, I didn't, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I originally wrote. We actually want to make it into exactly what you want. And even though you might not know it yet. So it's really bringing out what the composer is intending for that piece. That's part of the editing process. While thinking about, okay, this has to actually, sell, and it has to fit into our catalog. So that's a little bit about the editing process. There's a lot more that goes in on that. And we might have a later episode that talks about what actually, maybe some of the ins and outs of music editing. But we'll keep that in mind for future dates. So now it's edited and it's ready to go. So what's next? Well, we have to do the finishing touches. We actually have to get it to look like a piece of music. We still do physical copies, because there is a lot of people who still love the physical copies of music, even though the digital world is growing, and we still have to do the things to make sure it's going to look good on paper. So some of that is going to be cover art, some of that is going to be engraving it to where it's got all of its copyright information on it, and author composer, and just getting it into a typeset that is good for printing. And then eventually it gets printed and we actually have the piece to sell and promote. Then we also have to go through getting demonstration recordings so that you can actually hear it. That's done all over the country. A lot of different publishers use different recording studios, and we all will get professionals to help sing your pieces and make it the absolute perfection that you wanted it to be. So that's a little bit about how it comes together. And then eventually, of course, we publish it and it gets released to the world, and we seek to promote. And that's one of the really cool relationships that gets between composers and publishers. I've gotten to know a lot of composers through this job, and it's been really fun just getting, because we kind of partner together. I want to, our company as a music publisher wants to sell the pieces, but also the composer wants to sell. So we work together to promote, and there's all different types of ways that we do that, through composers talking about their pieces, and some pieces will get selected for reading sessions at conferences during the year, and all of that type of stuff that really makes it a fun time to put out the really good music and get it into people's hands. So that's a little bit about the music publishing world. That I know that's a broad overview. There are so many different, like little individual things that happen in all the process, and sometimes we run into snags and we have to, fix things and redo things. And it's a really fun process. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into who we are as a Choristers Guild, as a music publisher, what that even means. And hopefully that gives you just a few little tidbits that you might be able to share with somebody. Maybe you're an aspiring composer, and now you know a little bit more of what all entails in getting your piece into one of the publisher's hands and getting it into the hands of the people who you want to sing it. So I hope that if you have any questions, please, let me know, and drop a comment in the box below. Or if you have any suggestions on what we might talk about in the future, I am always open to that. And I look forward to talking with you all soon. We have a lot of fun topics planned for this season 1, and I'm excited. Lots of special guests that are going to come on as well. So I look forward to doing that with you all in the future. Make sure you subscribe and notified to be the first to hear what's going to be talked about next on the Open Fifth podcast.